Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Tune in daily for global literary gems carved just for you. Today we're exploring the Book of Tea. Author Okakura Kakuzo lived during Japan's Meiji era, hailed as a prodigious talent of his time. He began studying Chinese classics and English at 7, became part of Tokyo Imperial University's inaugural class at 16, and later founded Japan's first art academy, Tokyo School of Fine Arts. In 1904, Okakura went to America working at Boston Museum's Chinese and Japanese art department, becoming its curator by 1910. While abroad, Okakura discovered Westerners held absurd misunderstandings about the East. To correct these misconceptions, he wrote 3 English works: The Ideals of the East, The Awakening of Japan, and his most famous, The Book of Tea. Written in 1906 to introduce Japanese tea ceremony to the West, The Book of Tea became an instant sensation, creating Western Japaphiles and remaining a bestseller. Translated into French, German, Spanish, Swedish, and more, its engaging prose even earned selections in U.S. middle school textbooks. The book also sparked heated discussions in Japan and China. What makes the Book of Tea so captivating to Westerners? And why did it stir debate in tea culture powerhouses China and Japan? We'll explore 3 aspects. 1. Development of Japanese tea ceremony. 2. Cultural significance of Japanese tea ceremony. 3. Okakura's cultural ambitions. First, let's examine how Japanese tea ceremony developed. Japan's profound Chinese cultural influence is well documented. From political systems and architecture to cuisine and idioms, Chinese cultural imprints abound. Kakura's childhood Chinese studies reflect Japan's elite emphasis on Chinese traditions, with tea ceremony being a Chinese-originated practice refined in Japan. Opening the Book of Tea. We find detailed accounts of East Asian tea history, particularly China's. Kakura traces tea's daily consumption along China's Yangtze River back to the 4th century AD. During the Southern Dynasty's period, emperors would reward ministers with premium tea. Kakura described this era's tea preparation as crude. Leaves were simply steamed, formed into cakes, then boiled with rice, ginger, salt, citrus, peel, spices, milk, and sometimes syrup. He considered this method primitive, noting only some Mongol and Tibetan tribes still practiced it in his time. The Tang dynasty liberated tea from rudimentary forms during 8th century China's cultural fusion of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. In this context, Lu Yu authored the sacred text, The Classic of Tea. The book detailed tea botany, harvesting techniques, 24 tea utensils, brewing methods, folk customs, and famous tea anecdotes. Its publication caused immediate impact, earning Lu Xiu imperial recognition. Tangera, Japanese envoys, including Buddhist monks, brought tea culture back to Japan. They introduced tea consumption to Japan's aristocracy alongside Buddhist scriptures. Song dynasty saw tea evolution with matcha, powdered tea whisked in hot water. This method involved bamboo whisking to create froth, developing strict ceremonial rituals in Zen monasteries. Song intellectuals infused tea with philosophical meaning, seeing it as path to cosmic harmony and self-realization. Tea transcended daily refreshment, becoming medium for spiritual exploration. Japan continued sending monks to China during Song period. Monk Nanpo Shai encountered Jingshan Temple's tea rituals near Hangzhou in 1259. He introduced Jingsan tea banquet to Japan, transplanting both ceremony form and philosophical essence. The genesis of Japanese tea ceremony. Why does Okakura Kakuzo consider Japanese tea ceremony truly unique? This story begins with Song Dynasty history. In late Song Dynasty, Mongols conquered central China, establishing Yuan Dynasty. Though brief, this regime severely impacted traditional Chinese culture. Okakura claimed Mongols destroyed Song cultural achievements, while Ming Dynasty's internal conflicts led to Manchu takeover. He believed Song scholar officials used tea for self-realization and spiritual pursuit. Yunera chaos erased Jingshan tea banquet traditions, while warfare made Chinese abandon higher life meanings. Tea became mundane beverage rather than Song-style spiritual medium. Okakura lamented this loss, but noted authentic tea essence survived in Japan. He outlined Japanese tea history, 12th century, resistance against Mongol invasions, preserved cultural independence, and tea spirituality. Japan's island isolation fostered spiritual richness through internal focus. This geographical solitude cultivated deep philosophical contemplation. Tea ceremony absorbed ethico-philosophical dimensions in Japan. Gradually diverging from Chinese framework, it became uniquely Japanese. The book's first emphasis, tracing Japanese tea ceremony origins. Okakura viewed Japanese tea ceremony as inheritor of Tang Song tea culture legacy. Island geography intensified Japanese focus on spiritual realms. Japanese-infused spiritual depth into Chinese-derived tea practices. What cultural essence makes tea ceremony Japan's iconic symbol? This introduces the second focus, tea ceremony's cultural significance. Okakura's descriptions of Taoist and Zen influences might initially confuse readers. Though philosophically rich, how do these abstract concepts relate to tea ceremony? Japanese tea philosophy can be summarized through Okakura's interpretation. The tea spirit is encapsulated in four principles: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. These principles emerged from Japan's adaptation of Taoist and Zen philosophies. They embody tea ceremony's cultural essence, pursuing harmony between humanity and nature. This reflects core discussions in China's Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism traditions. Respect manifests through mutual esteem between host and guest during tea sessions. It also implies reverential attitude towards all things. Purity requires mental clarity to perceive Zen truths through tea practice. Tranquility emphasizes merging with nature's eternal serenity. Cultural interpretations risk becoming abstract philosophical exercises. Understanding tea ceremony requires examining Japanese tea practices and environments. Returning to the book's description of Japanese tea customs, omitting Sen no Riki would be like discussing Tang poetry without Li Bai or Du Fu. Riki lived during Japan's Warring States period, when tea ceremony gained popularity. This Zen monk studied under tea master Takeno-ji before serving Toyotomi Hideyoshi. After unifying Japan, Hideyoshi cherished Reiki for his tea mastery and grand tea gatherings. Accused of poisoning Hideyoshi's tea, Reiki was ordered to commit seppuku in 1591. Reiki's greatest contribution was establishing the tea room standard. The tea room, Chichitsu, serves as ceremonial space for tea gatherings, contrasting with grand castles like Osakaho. Tea rooms represented countercultural minimalism. Okakura saw Reiki's compact tea rooms as containing universal cosmic truths. Called Sukiya, abode of artistic aspiration. These spaces embody poetic refinement. Tea rooms are also empty houses due to their unadorned aesthetic. The name asymmetrical house reflects their deliberately imperfect designs. This reflects Japanese appreciation for imperfection through intentional spatial minimalism, creating meditative space. Sen no Reiki established these tea room standards. A complete tea complex includes Mizuya preparation area, Genkan entrance, Roji garden path, and Chachitsu tea room. The Genkan serves as waiting area where guests anticipate hosts' welcome. As Zen monk Reiki designed Roji to embody tea ceremony's spiritual essence. The term Roji originates from Buddhist sutras, symbolizing bodhisattva's transcendence of worldly temptations. This transitional space bridges mundane world and spiritual oasis, not for leisure but contemplation. Entering Roji requires shedding worldly concerns for mental purification. Only through Roji can one reach the tea room, sanctuary beyond secular existence. Though compact, typically 5-person capacity, this intentionally imperfect space manifests tea philosophy. Reiki's tea rooms exemplify wabi-sabi aesthetic through rustic simplicity. Nestled in natural settings, they achieve human nature harmony. Guests await respectfully at Genkan, mirrored by hosts' ceremonious greeting. Reiki's Nijiriguchi crawling entrance requires bowing mutual respect, made physical. The unadorned interior returns participants to primal simplicity. Spatial purity induces mental clarity for savoring tea and Zen insights. Imperfect asymmetry prompts cosmic contemplation through tea's essence. Thus, the tea room actualizes Wakai Seijaku principles. Tea drinking becomes spiritual discipline within this serene space. Japanese tea ceremony involves meticulous drinking rituals. The formal tea procedure follows these key steps. First, the tea master prepares charcoal fire, boils water, brews tea or matcha, then serves guests in sequence. When presenting tea, the master orients the bowl's most beautiful pattern toward guests who receive it with both hands, rotate it thrice while savoring, then return utensils. Post-tasting. Guests traditionally request to admire the tea utensils. These celadon wares match standards from Luya's Classic of Tea. Japanese prefer celadon's ability to enhance tea's chromatic beauty over white porcelain. Warring States period elites imported Chinese celadon teapots at great cost. These Karamono Chinese imports became treasured heirlooms and status symbols. Gifting tea utensils signified deep trust, reserved for nobles, soulmates, or family. Departing guests bow deeply. Hosts reciprocate with ceremonial farewells. Tea ceremony has 2 serving styles: rotation drinking and individual portions. Rotation style. Guests share single bowl scenely. Individual style. Each guest receives personal bowl. Riki's final tea gathering before death epitomized tea philosophy.
Knowing his fate, Riki invited disciples for final tea ceremony.
After rituals, Riki distributed utensils, but kept his own bowl.
A bowl touched by doomed lips shouldn't be reused, he declared.
He then shattered the bowl dramatically.
Guests departed tearfully as Riki donned white death robes. He committed seppuku before closest confidants. This tragic poetry became legendary in tea history.
Riki's death embodied tea philosophy. Ultimate return to cosmic tranquility beyond life, death. Riki established 7 tea principles. 1. Brew tea at drinkable temperature. 2. Use quality charcoal for perfect boiling. 3. Arrange flowers as they grow wild. 4. Maintain seasonally appropriate tea room temperatures. 5th. Prepare early despite scheduled timing. 6th. Keep rain gear ready even on clear days. 7th. Anticipate fellow guests' needs. These principles still influence modern Japanese lifestyle practices. Tea philosophy permeates Japanese life as living ritual and social ethics. This cultural depth became Okakura's proudest advocacy. Tea ceremonies often incorporate koto music or ikebana flower arrangements. Kakura noted many historic artists were tea masters, the serene environment fostering artistic appreciation. Floral arrangements during tea gatherings allow contemplation of life's transience through ephemeral beauty. Many Japanese art forms originate from or were refined through tea culture's influence. Let's recap Japanese tea ceremonies' cultural essence. Rooted in Chinese Taoism and Zen, it crystallized as wa keisejaku philosophy. This spirituality manifests physically through tea room design and ceremonial etiquette. Sen no Riki personifies this culture, while Okakura's prose enchanted Western audiences. Westerners rediscovered Japanese civilization through this cultural lens. Why did Okakura choose tea ceremony as Japan's cultural ambassador? This leads to the third focus. Okakura's use of tea to showcase Japan's cultural ambitions. His dual agenda positioned Japanese culture as Eastern civilization's pinnacle and counterbalance Western hegemony. How did Okakura elevate Japanese culture through tea ceremony? Crucially, by asserting Japan's custodianship of cultural orthodoxy. Earlier sections trace tea ceremony origins to 4th century China. Okakura extensively praised Tangsong, China's glorious tea culture. Yet he argued, authentic Chinese cultural continuity had collapsed. Mongol-Manchu rule erased China's refined tea traditions per his view. Only Japan preserved this legacy through Tangsong cultural absorption. Late on decline contrasted with Meiji Japan's vitality in Okakura's era. This demonstrated Japanese cultural supremacy to Okakura. He positioned Japan as Eastern civilization's guiding force. Japanese tea ceremony blended Chinese heritage with modern innovation. As daily ritual and spiritual practice, It epitomized Japanese excellence. Okakura declared it Eastern civilization's crowning jewel. Tea's global popularity made it ideal cultural ambassador. Western tea traditions originated from Eastern practices. Tea became civilizational benchmark between East and West. Exotic Japanese tea customs intrigued Western readers. This segues into Okakura's second agenda, countering Western hegemony. Poston, 1868. Meiji. Reforms embraced Westernization. Fukuzawa Yukichi advocated Dakuzo, nay, leave Asia, enter Europe. Okakura resisted this trend, preserving traditional arts amid opposition. His Boston exile fueled determination to showcase Japanese cultural parity. The Book of Tea ultimately affirmed Eastern civilization's equivalence to the West. Initially mentioned, Okakura discovered Westerners held vague stereotypical views of the East during his travels. This Orientalist fantasy reached absurd levels with racist yellow peril theories, vilifying East Asians. Western stereotypes portrayed Asians as uncouth, unhygienic, even consuming cockroaches and rats. Okakura countered, Western civilization bred greed and moral decay through industrial enslavement. He contrasted this with Japanese tea ceremonies' refined etiquette and immaculate utensils as proof of Eastern sophistication. To Japanese, tea transcends beverage. Its spiritual discipline, refining character. Tea worship demonstrates Eastern spiritual superiority over materialistic West. Okakura's direct address revealed cultural ambitions. Let us cease cross-continental sarcasm. Different paths may not preclude mutual enrichment. Your expansion brought chaos. Our harmony endures. Will you acknowledge this? In tea ceremony, East surpasses West. Summarizing the Book of Tea's 3 key arguments. 1. Japanese tea ceremony inherits and evolves Chinese cultural orthodoxy, becoming Japan's cultural signature. 2. Wakai Seijaku philosophy permeates tea room design, rituals, and daily etiquette. 3. Okakura's cultural manifesto positions tea ceremony as Eastern civilization's equalizer against Western hegemony. The book's Western success partially achieved Okakura's goals. However, its reception sparked debates in China and Japan. In Japan, Okakura's work inspired Pan-Asianism, ideology countering Westernization trends. Advocates promoted Eastern civilization's development, with Japan leading Asian prosperity. This ideology carried complex historical consequences.
Okakura's cultural supremacy narrative arguably contributed to Japan's imperial ambitions and regional tragedies.
In China, the book remains controversial to this day. During its publication era, Chinese intellectuals maintained Sinocentric views, dismissing Japan's cultural claims. Many Chinese saw Japan's cultural assertions as arrogant appropriation of Chinese heritage.
Later Japanese invasions intensified Chinese resentment towards these cultural narratives.
Some Chinese view Okakura's theories as ideological precursor to Japanese militarism. The book contains historical inaccuracies, like misdating Zhou dynasty's founding to 16th century BCE actual 11th century BCE. Errors include confusing mythological figures, Gonggong with Surong, and misattributing Ming scholars to Song dynasty. Readers must critically identify these factual errors. Modern readers should primarily appreciate Japanese tea ceremonies' aesthetic philosophy. Scholar Kai Chunhu notes the book prompts Chinese cultural self-reflection beyond surface critiques. As Okakura preserved Yamato's spirit, shouldn't we safeguard Chinese cultural essence? This concludes our interpretation of the Book of Tea. Keynotes follow this audio segment. Until tomorrow,